Have you ever stopped and wondered, is it really possible for me to fool myself? And if I did, how on earth would I even know? Let's get real. Self-deception isn't some quirky personal flaw. It's a deep philosophical and psychological puzzle that's baffled some of the smartest minds for thousands of years. Plato, the legendary philosopher, once warned, "There is nothing worse than self-deception when the deceiver is at home and always with you." That's yourself. But this isn't just an abstract problem for philosophers. It's something that affects every one of us every single day. Think about it. Why do some people ignore obvious red flags in relationships? Why do some folks keep making the same mistakes, convinced that this time it will be different? And why do we so often overestimate our own abilities, even when the evidence says otherwise? Hi everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching day 44 of my channel, Henry's Millions. On this channel, I dive deep into psychology, philosophy, spirituality, and mind mastery, helping you unlock your personal potential and understand the forces that shape your life. So here's a fun fact. A survey of university professors found that 94% of them believe that they're better at their jobs than their average colleague. 94%. And in a survey of 1 million high school seniors, 70% of them, that's 1 million high school seniors, 70% of them rated themselves as above average in leadership ability. Statistically, that's impossible. So what's going on here? Are we just lying to ourselves, or is there something deeper at work? Today, I'm going to take you on a journey into the real mechanics of self-deception. We'll uncover how it works, why it happens, and most importantly, what can you do to spot it in your own life? If you want to make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and avoid costly mistakes, stick around. So let's start by busting a myth. Most people think self-deception is like lying to yourself, a kind of mental sleight of hand, where you, the trickster, fool yourself, the victim. It sounds paradoxical, right? But how can we be both the liar and the one being lied to at the same time? Philosopher Alfred Mele said this is a fundamental misunderstanding. He wrote a fantastic paper, a document I found that's titled Real Self-Deception. It was written in 1991, and it formed the inspiration and basis for our talk today. According to Mele, self-deception isn't just interpersonal deception turned inward, where person A is deceiving person B. In fact, most self-deception is not intentional. You don't have to consciously decide, I'm going to trick myself now, and then do it. Nor do you have two contradictory beliefs in your mind at the same time, like you believe A and you believe not A at the same time. Here's the real secret. Self-deception is about how our desires unconsciously bias what we believe. It's not about tricking yourself on purpose. It's about how your hopes, fears, and wishes quietly shape the way you see the world, often without you even realizing it. Let's look at a real-world example. So in a classic study, researchers found that women who were heavy caffeine drinkers were much less convinced by scientific evidence linking caffeine to health risks. Why? Because they wanted to keep feeling good about their coffee habit. So their motivation to stay optimistic about their health made them less likely to accept evidence that threatened that optimism. So no conscious trickery was required there, just the subtle, powerful influence of desire. So how do our desires and motivations bias our beliefs, often without us knowing? Let's face it, people tend to believe what they want to be true, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. And it's not just wishful thinking, it's a built-in feature in how our minds work. Remember those stats from earlier? 70% of high school seniors think they're above average in leadership. 94% of professors think they're better than their colleagues. Clearly, we're not all living in reality. But why? Motivation can bias how we generate, evaluate, and recall evidence. When we want something to be true, we're more likely to notice information that supports it, remember it, and even interpret ambiguous facts in our favor. Take that caffeine study again. The heavy caffeine drinkers weren't sitting around plotting to ignore the research. Instead, their desire to keep drinking coffee, enjoying coffee, quietly influenced how they processed the evidence. So they were less likely to believe the studies, not because they were dishonest, but because their motivation primed their thinking. So let's now I want to introduce to you 4 key cognitive biases that set the stage for self-deception, okay? 4 cognitive biases. Number 1, it's called vividness of information. So we remember and focus on vivid, emotionally charged data. Think about the last time you had an argument. What sticks in your mind from that? So probably it's going to be the most dramatic or emotional moments, not the boring details. When we want something to be true, the vivid evidence that supports it stands out even more. Then there's the availability heuristic. So we judge, let me say it again, availability heuristic. So we judge likelihood by what's easiest to recall or imagine. So if you can quickly think of a time when you succeeded, you might overestimate how likely you are to succeed again, even if that memory is the exception, not the rule. Then there's the confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is when we seek out and remember evidence that supports what we want to believe. So if you've ever Googled something like reasons my business idea will succeed, instead of reasons it might fail, you get the point. So that's confirmation bias in action. And finally, there's causal explanation bias. So we're quick to invent explanations that fit our desires. If you want to believe your cough is just allergies, not a sign of something more serious, you'll find a way to explain it away. And motivation primes these biases, right? So like you prime a pump. So you get that. And motivation leads us to misinterpret, to selectively attend to, or selectively gather evidence. And this is all without us intending to deceive ourselves. So now that we've covered these 4 biases, let's see how these biases actually play out in our thinking through 4 core motivational mechanisms. And these are desire-driven, so motivational mechanisms. Number 1, it's called negative misinterpretation. I know I tend to introduce a lot of concepts in these videos, so if you need to, you can go back and replay it or you can make notes. We just covered 4 cognitive biases, right? I'll repeat them for you real quick. Vividness of information, availability heuristic, confirmation bias, and causal explanation bias, okay? Now we're going on to the mechanisms, the 4 mechanisms for self-deception. They're desire-driven. So the biases play out in our thinking this way. So the first one is negative misinterpretation. So this is when we interpret evidence that counts against what we want as being weak or irrelevant. So I'll give you an example. So let's say there's an author, he have a manuscript, he presents that manuscript for publishing, and it's dismissed, it's rejected, right? So the author dismisses this criticism as a misunderstanding. So instead of seeing the feedback as valid, the author wrote it off as ignorance or bias. So it's negative misinterpretation. The second one is called positive misinterpretation. So this is where we twist ambiguous or contrary evidence into support for our desires. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's say a man is interested in a woman, and he's pursuing her, but he sees a clear rejection from her as her playing hard to get. So he's reinterpreting the evidence to fit his wishful narrative. This is just one example, okay, of positive misinterpretation. Then there's selectively focusing or attention. So this is when we pay attention only to evidence that supports our wishes and ignore the rest. So an example of this is like a spouse who focuses only on signs of faithfulness while ignoring the mounting evidence of infidelity. It's just an example. And finally, there's what's called selective evidence gathering. So this is when we actively seek out confirming evidence and overlook or avoid disconfirming evidence. And an example of this, let's say an author, historian, he looks for only sources that support his or her theory, missing obvious evidence to the contrary. So do any of these sound familiar to you? I mean, chances are you've used one or more of these mechanisms in the past, probably without even realizing it. So what does it actually take for this self-deception to occur? So according to Mele, 4 things need to happen. And Alfred Mele is the author of this paper from the late 90s. I probably will put a link in the description if you're interested. It's a very complex but very thoughtful and comprehensive talk. Very intelligent individual. So again, what actually has to happen for self-deception to occur? He has 4 steps. Number 1 is you acquire a false belief. Number 2, you treat relevant data in a motivationally biased way, using the mechanisms we just discussed. And number 3, this bias causes you to adopt the false belief. And finally, number 4, the evidence actually supports the opposite conclusion. Okay, so these are the 4 steps for self-deception to occur. And let's walk through a real life scenario right now. So let me repeat these for you real quick, and then we'll get into the scenario. So number 1, you acquire a false belief. Number 2, you treat relevant data in a motivationally biased way, using some of the mechanisms we just discussed. Number 3, the bias causes you to adopt the false belief. And number 4, the evidence actually supports the opposite conclusion. Okay, so real life scenario. Imagine Sam. Sam's spouse has been coming home late, deleting texts, and friends have even hinted at her infidelity. But Sam doesn't see it. So when confronted with these late nights, Sam says she's just working hard. When texts are missing, he shrugs, she probably just needs space on her phone. When friends warn him, he thinks, they're just jealous of our relationship. So Sam isn't intentionally lying to himself. Instead, his desire for his marriage to be okay systematically distorts how he processes the evidence. He uses negative misinterpretation by dismissing the warnings. He uses positive misinterpretation by seeing ambiguous behavior as innocent. He uses selective focusing, only noticing loving gestures. And he uses selective evidence gathering by never asking probing questions. So what's the result here in this example? Sam genuinely believes his marriage is fine, even though the evidence points the other way. So this is the heart of Mele's insight. In self-deception, we don't start by knowing the truth and then trick ourselves. Instead, our desire desires shape our thinking so that we never fully confront the evidence against what we want to believe. So why does any of this matter? Because self-deception can be dangerous. It can blind us to risks, undermine our relationships, and keep us stuck in patterns that hurt us. Think of a smoker who dismisses a persistent cough as just allergies, or the entrepreneur who ignores warning signs that their business is failing. But here's a twist. Sometimes self-deception can actually help us. Research shows that patients facing serious illness sometimes benefit from a degree of unrealistic optimism. It can help them cope, persevere, and even improve their outcomes. Also, entrepreneurs, overconfidence can drive them to take risks, which can lead to innovation. The key I want to emphasize is balance. So while self-deception can sometimes protect us, it often does us more harm than good, especially when it keeps us from facing important truths. And the message here for you today is that research shows that some sources of bias are controllable. And by understanding self-deception, we can reduce its frequency and impact on our lives. So let's recap now. Self-deception isn't some mysterious paradox. It's rooted in motivationally biased cognition, how our desires quietly shape what we believe, often without us even knowing. So here's my challenge to you. Where might you be deceiving yourself? What beliefs do you hold that might be more about desire than evidence? Do you dismiss criticisms too quickly? Do you reinterpret ambiguous signals to fit your hopes? Do you focus only on the evidence that makes you feel good? If you're brave enough, please share your thoughts and experiences with self-deception in the comments. And which of these mechanisms or biases do you recognize in yourself? The more we understand how self-deception works, the better equipped we are to see ourselves and the world more clearly. So thank you for watching today. And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And leave your insights below, share it with a friend. And remember, the hardest part to see clearly is always ourselves, but it's also the most important. Thank you. Every time.